Hello. I hit go live and realized I hadn't finished erasing my guidelines to my word balloons. So yeah, I'm working on the same page that I penciled last time on the stream. This is a page from my webcomic, Age of Night. We have chapter 24, page 17. And yeah, I finished drawing it. As you can see, there's a few more panels on there than there were before. And I did the lettering. So that's what I've done since last time. I forgot to erase the guidelines before we started for this evening. So I'm going to get those cleared out. Just using my little plastic eraser, what's left of it. I think that was a Faber-Castell one once upon a time. So yeah, you can see the guidelines from where I used my Ames lettering guide to make sure that my words were all nice and even and evenly spaced. I've got a whole video about hand lettering using the Ames guide and ellipse templates to get those nice, smooth word balloons on the outside. Almost done here. Just totally forgot to do this before we started. I looked down and was like, oh no! But yeah, after all of I don't do it right away after I do the lettering because you want to make sure the actual lettering the actual words are like 110% dry, super, super duper dry. Because otherwise, as soon as you hit them, if there's the tiniest bit of it that's not fully dry yet, as soon as you hit it with the eraser, it's just going to smear everywhere. And then you will be very sad. Have been there many a time. Okay. So now that that's cleaned up, I did not bother masking any of my word balloons because it's nothing spoilery. Nothing spoilery is happening on this page. It's the beginning of a scene, so it's all pretty self-explanatory. There's nothing that's a big surprise for what's coming. So I'm going to open up my ink. I'm using the Royal Talons India ink, which I've been preferring for pen work because we're starting with the dip pen, which, yes, is kind of crusty and gross looking because my handle just never seems to get 100% clean. It's always a little bit crusty. All right. Normally I would start up on the top panel, but on the top panel, I don't really have anything that requires the use of any tools. So I'm going to jump down here to this panel and get a little bit done with the tools, because that always takes a while because you can't do it all at once. You got to do a couple passes and let it dry. So we're going to do a little bit of that with my straight edge here. Is that? Yeah, that's on that side of it. Okay. There's not a lot of this stuff on this page, but get a little bit of it done. Because you can't do all of it at the same time because then you would drag your tool through the wet ink and make a big mess. So you got to do like a few at a time and then go work on something else and then come back. So. And then always clean the edge of your tools after using ink so that you do not smear wet ink everywhere. Okay, so now I'm going to come back up here and start working on some of this. Maybe I'll start working on that. My pen is going to cooperate. There we go. All right. Just a very thin kind of broken line back there for that. Work on this little scrubby little tree. Trying not to overdo the little tree too much so it doesn't look too dark. But getting that little texture of those little spiny boughs there. Little spiny boughs down here. Always kind of a delicate balance with trees and shrubs and that sort of thing, where it's like you want it to look like what it's supposed to look like, but you don't want to be rendering every blasted pine needle. All right, some little rocks. All right, so I'm going to add just a little bit of texture to these rocks back here for where they should be shaded a little bit to just give them a little bit of form. Whoops, I'm sliding out of frame there. Sorry about that. All right. So yeah, I don't want to get too much on there because those are a little bit farther back in the scene. So the farther away things are from the picture plane, the viewer, then you kind of want to ease up on the amount of detail that you put on them. So, and contrast. You want to lower the contrast and detail because that's kind of what happens when things are further away. You can't see as many details on them, and they appear lighter and less contrasty because of atmospheric perspective. A little more rock texture here. Well, not enough ink on that one. All right, so there's another rock. Quite a few of those in this scene. And now you can see this rock that's the most far forward. I'm giving a little bit of a bolder line to. Which helps make it appear to be closer. kind of pops it forward from the one that it's right next to. I'm actually going to render this little shrub right in front of it first. See, we're back outside. The backgrounds take a while now again. We were outside before too, but it was like the previous scene that I was working on was like, it was outside, but it was in the temple complex, so there was a lot more just like walls, less flora. A little bit of a dirt texture here. All right, and some more rock texture to give this a little bit of dimension as well. And then we're going to move on to doing a little bit more of the tool work on that other panel. So kind of have to bop around a lot in this particular phase of inking as I try to jump around between different areas of wet ink. Hello. Thanks for joining. Sorry if your comment's been hanging there for a minute. I was looking at my texture that I was working on. Let me see. Can I? What it? All right. All right, so there's that rock. We're gonna come back down here for a second. Now that those lines are dry, I'm gonna do the next set of lines. All right. Come on, cooperate, paper. All right, we'll get this little bit right here, and then I'm gonna leave this panel alone again for a bit. All right, clean off your tool, move it out of the way, and we're gonna come back up here for a little bit. Whoops, then I'm gonna bang into my camera like a goober. I do want to add something to this mountain back here, but I'm not really sure what. So I'm going to leave it for right now and think about it. See how the balance of the rest of this panel comes out. Come on. Sometimes it's best to just leave things alone for a minute and then come back to them when you have a better idea of the full picture of what you're working with. I can visualize the whole panel finished pretty well, but it still helps sometimes to just, if you're not really sure of what you want something to look like, just give it a minute. Give it a minute, come back to it. Adding a little bit more of this texture on this dirt road. All right, and we're going to ink our little characters back here. All right, so we've got two different characters on horses. All right, and a little bit of shadow beneath each horsey. Whoops, whoops, whoops. All right, we've got this big kind of cliff over here. And again, very light on the shading on those because we want to keep it not very contrasty, keep it very light. More rocks. More rocks. Little shrub. another big rock. More ink. Oh my goodness. Hello. So, okay. So the question is, how do I decide when to use a brush and when to use a pen when it comes to the background drawing? So for the background, most of the time I use a pen. And part of that is that it helps the characters to stand out from the background because the characters I do almost entirely with brush. So they've just got like a different kind of quality to their line work. So it helps them kind of pop off the background. Pretty much the only times I use a brush on the background are for if I have like shrubs, little shrubs like way in the foreground. So like they're right close by in the foreground or in front of a character. And so then rather than drive myself crazy making a million of these itty bitty little marks in order to make the leaves and the foliage look more substantial, I'll do those with a brush. Or I will do like large spot blacks with a brush. But that's pretty much it. Everything else, I'll do it for backgrounds. I do almost entirely with the pen and ink. And characters are almost always in brush. If they're super duper tiny, like these guys, I'll do them with a pen just because with a brush, I'm not really gaining anything by doing them with a brush. It's just gonna make my life difficult because they're so tiny. And then when you get like fairly tiny, but not super tiny, that's when I would kind of have to decide on a case-by-case basis of like, do I want to do this with the brush? Do I want to do this with the pen? What am I feeling here? I don't know which way I'm going to go on these guys yet. But yeah, almost entirely, with the exception of some foliage and spot blacks, its backgrounds are all done in the pen. And it's just kind of like a stylistic choice, I guess. At this point, it basically is a part of my style because I've done it that way for so long. Certain little details I'll pick out on the characters with the pen and nib as well. So like usually stuff like weapons that I want to use like a French curve for to make sure that they have a nice even curve to them, or like little laces or belt buckles or stuff like that. A lot of that will end up getting done in pen nib just to keep the nice precise little tiny lines. All right, I'm getting bored of stippling these rocks, so I'm gonna jump over to another panel here for a second. We're gonna come back down here. Let me see. I kind of want to use a really gentle French curve for part of those wheels. We've got this like smashed cart here. But I can only do that side. I can't do this side of the wheel that's going to curve this way because I would have to flip my French curve over, and I don't want to stick it down on that wet ink. Do not want that. So I'm going to come down here. And do this part. Get as much of that to match the curve as I can. Here we go. I think that's gonna do it for the tools for this pass down here. I'm going to let those dry a little bit. Work on some of this other stuff down in here a little bit. We've got busted axle, just all sorts of mess. Can do some of this tack on this horse here. The horse itself will be in brush because it's a figure in the foreground. Because this chaos going on here is the focus of this panel. So. But the little details of the tack and harness and everything I'm doing in the pen. Poor horsey trying to get out of there. He's in trouble. All right. What are we at? We're about 27 minutes in. We're about halfway through. So I use I do these live streams. I usually have them last about an hour. Because at the end of an hour, I should probably get up and stretch and get something to drink, and you really should too. We should all get up and move and drink some water. Or like Gatorade or whatever. Whatever works for you. Get another little shrub here. Try to make sure that my shrub texture is different from my rock texture so you can tell them apart. And here's a little shrub. Some more grass. Come on. And we get another little tree. All right. Getting there on this first panel. We're almost done on that first panel. We just got this little section over here. These big establishing shots take a little while. But I really enjoy including them. They bring a real sense of like place and reality to the world, I feel. I don't think every story needs a ton of establishing shots, but when you're writing a fantasy story, it certainly helps. All right. Did I get no ink on my nib this last time I put it in there? Come on. I think my... So, okay, I have this issue. So I very carefully hold this over my page to show you. So this works really well, this tiny opening in the inkwell. It works very well for a regular pen nib, but with my big fat wooden pen nib, I kind of get like stuck. I get stuck trying to reach in there and get more ink because I've got my big fat wooden pen nib holder. A regular pen nib holder fits in there perfectly and it's great. I have issues with my custom fat wooden holder. I like it though. I like it because I generally hate having pieces of plastic crap in my life because I'm that kind of hippie. And also it's better for your hands to not grip as tightly. So having a wider gripped tool is better for you. So multiple reasons. I like the feel of the wood a lot too. It just feels nice in my hand. It's a little more obvious that it's getting caked in ink, but you know. So one drawback with that particular bottle of ink, I just get kind of stuck on the collar and don't always quite reach all the way inside to get the ink that I think I'm getting. Not every bottle of ink do I have that problem with. But, another little tree over here. And again, I'm trying to make it look like a tree. Get that needly texture without overworking the whole thing or making a mess by trying to render every little pine bough. All right, that's pretty good. That's a pretty good little tree. All right, I'm gonna come back to those last couple little bits here. Whoop. I'm going to hang on, try not to get seasick. Here we go. Whee! Because now I'm going to get the other side of some of these curves. So we're going to get this lower edge of this wheel. And this edge of the wheel. And then on this side of the curve where it's a much gentler curve, we're going to get this side of this wheel. There we go. All right, now hang on, we can move them back around. Flip them back around. Clean off your tool. And now we can come back up here. Just got to periodically go back down there and get a little bit more done so that theoretically that will eventually all get done. One little quick pass at a time. A little bit more of this shading on this cliff over here. And again, this rock is in the foreground, so it's got a nice thick outline. Whoop, whoop, whoop. Get this last bit of texture up in here. Of course, this is a larger rock, so it's going to take a minute to fill in with all the, oh, come on, give me the ink. Dang it. There we go. Make this kind of, this one section of this rock is a little darker. This section here is a little lighter. Another section that's a little darker. Trying to hold my paper still so it's not bouncing around while I'm trying to stipple. All right, there's that rock. Okay, so I've got a little bit more dirt and rocks to do here. All right, so that first panel is pretty much done. I still want to do something with this mountain over here, but I'm still not entirely sure what I want to do there, so I'm going to leave it for now and just kind of stew on that. I'd rather leave it there and think for a bit than do something hastily and regret it. So let's see. I'm going to see what else I can do here with my tools for this pass. Get some more of these. This wrecked wagon. Beams, bits of wood and wagon. All right, so before we continue with that panel, I'm going to come back over here to this one It's primarily these two characters, but I do have just a little bit of background here so that they are not just floating in the void. Just that tiny bit of like, hey, there are rocks back here can really help ground the panel so that it's not just like these guys are just floating in space talking. Floating in space talking heads, totally fine in certain circumstances. But you just don't want it to be like all of the circumstances. All right, and like I said earlier, some little details that I do in pen on the characters include things like laces, because pain in the butt. Let's see, that is probably going to be it actually for this panel on the pen work, because I've got my little suggestion of a background, the little lacing details on Zeke's tunic here, and that's really going to do it on that one. So moving on to this next panel, which I will almost certainly not finish before time because there's a lot going on in here. There's a lot going on, and we're at 42 minutes, so it's still going to be a little bit. Got a little less than 20 minutes left in the stream. Now this is the same, like this is the same rock. Sorry, I'm pointing where you can't see. So this rock is the same as this rock. This tree is the same as this tree. This rock is the same as this rock. So I kind of have to look at the previous panel while I'm working on this and make sure that I'm, even if they don't look exactly the same, maintaining enough of the same character that it's like, oh yeah, they clearly have just come down the road like a few yards. They are not somewhere else entirely. Now, like this stuff is even farther in the background, so I don't want to add too much to it, especially because it's really not the focus of this panel. The focus is down here, so we don't want to get this too busy up here and draw that focus away. More dirt. More dirt. Okay, so now that I have gotten to these figures, I think I am going to do these guys in nib again, if only because, partially because, yeah, they're kind of tiny and doing them in a brush would be a little bit of a pain, but also because I do want the focus of this panel to be on what's going on up here. So to help that pop forward, I'm going to have these figures the horse and these 3 people in the front here, those are all going to be in brush, and these guys are going to be in nib because they're observing this. Like, they're not the active part of this panel. They're not the focus of this panel. Like, we know that Zeke and Balthazar are here. We know that they're the characters that we're following, but they're not like the most important thing to be looking at in this particular panel. What they are looking at is the thing that you need to be focusing on. So we've got Zeke on his horse. That's many saddlebags and things. So again, with these figures way back here, you've got to kind of pare down the details that you include on them. Balthazar on his horse. Of course, he's riding a black horse. Like, of course he is. There we go. Horses. Oh. Zeke's horse is a dapple gray, so I'm going to add just a couple of little spots of texture. Since he's close enough, you'd start to see some of that. And a little shadow underneath them. A little more dirt road texture overall. And some more rocks. All right, what time are we at? We're at 50 minutes. So now that we're in the last 10, start telling you the things in case you came in late or just don't happen to know. I'm Amanda Call. I am working on a page for my webcomic, Age of Night, which you can find at ageofnight.com. ageofnight.com. That's AGEOFNIGHT. I update a new comic page every Wednesday. This comic page will be up in, like a month or so. It's still a little ways off. I have several more to go through before this one will get posted, so that I have time to work on it over a few streams. So the whole thing is available for free to read online. If you want to support me, though, you can support me on Patreon. So that's patreon.com/ageofnight, spelled the same way as the comic. All of my patrons get the comic a week early, so they're always 1 week ahead of whatever's posted publicly. You get to see lots of fun, like behind-the-scenes stuff and early previews of things. You get free comics, all sorts of good stuff. And you get my undying appreciation. So there's that too. Little perk. You can also buy copies of my comic. You can buy ebook, like PDF versions on Drive-Thru RPG, Drive-Thru Comics, and Drive-Thru Fiction. You can buy them from Skirmisher Publishing's website at skirmisher.com. They're like my online publisher. They're really cool. They're primarily a gaming company, but they do also distribute a few different comics. And I do a lot of work with them as a gaming company, and they're pretty awesome. So you can get PDF versions from them on those different platforms. You can buy physical copies, normally for me at conventions, but conventions aren't happening right now, so that's not going to work. Next best thing is to get them from my friendly local bookstore, which is the Briar Patch in Bangor, Maine. Look it up on their website. They have signed copies. If you do not see any of the books, I have 3 volumes so far. If you don't see one of the volumes on their website, just give them a call or shoot them a message, and even if they don't have it in stock, I can bring them more. I do not live far away, and I have boxes of them lying around, so I can just bring them more. And then you support an independent artist in an independent bookstore, which is all very cool. You can, of course, also buy physical copies and ebook copies on that big giant website where you can buy everything if you must. And what else? Oh yeah, other social medias. So you can follow me on Twitter at Age of Night. You can follow me on Instagram at Amanda Call Art. That's just my name with the word art after it, all is one word. If you like watching these live streams and listening to me chat while I work, then you should subscribe to my YouTube channel. I do these live streams every Tuesday, and I also do other art videos, either like process videos of me making illustrations or like topic videos where I talk about either an art technique, or I talk about some part of my process, or I talk about some just art stuff in general, or I review supplies, or just, stuff, general YouTube stuff. Then you should subscribe to this channel if any of that sounds interesting to you. And, like the video, all that good stuff. Do the YouTube stuff. You know what you're here. You know what the YouTube stuff is. You know how this goes. Oh, there is also an Age of Night Facebook page if you do the Facebook. So you got options. I try to have my bases covered. It can be difficult for a Luddite like myself to keep up, but I try. This wall of rocks. More rocks. More dots. More rocks. More dots. "15-year-old internet humor." All right, we are just about at time. I'm gonna finish getting some dots on this rock, and then I think that's gonna do us for this evening. All right, so let's see. That's gonna do it for tonight's stream. So I started with my page all penciled and lettered, and now at the end of this hour, I have the background inking done on 2.5-ish. Well, more like 2 3/4. I'm most of the way through background inking there, out of 5 panels. So made pretty good progress. And then next week we will continue working on this. I don't know whether I'll finish the background inking and we'll just move on to brush or what we're going to do yet. I'm not sure. I haven't decided, but yeah, thanks everybody for coming and hanging out, and hopefully I will see you guys next time. Bye.